Good afternoon to all of our LightPoint listeners. This is Dr. Don coming at you again with the daily LightPoint. I've been a little delayed this week, just with just many barriers personally and just professionally that I'm working through, right? And what prompted me to engage this week topically really stems from last week. I had a really productive week. I was excited because I finally recorded my first podcast and had some phenomenal real time dialogue with a phenomenal leader. You'll hear more about that in the next day or two. But through that exercise, as you guys know, my podcasts are real leaders, real talk, real time, which means oftentimes they're impromptu. There's not a ton of production and preparation that I establish as part of my podcast. Sometimes it's these moments of inspiration in these conversations that prompt, hey, would you like to tune into our podcast? So with that being said, I embarked upon this phenomenal podcast, had a great setup, a great environment to record. Let me tell you, this brings me to our topic for our light point today. There's an old carpentry adage that says, measure 3 times, check twice, cut once. Remember that. Measure 3 times, check twice, cut once. It's the premise that no matter how equipped you believed you are, no matter how much skill and competency you have around this thing that you're setting out to do, double check. Be prepared around what's required to execute as flawlessly as you can. Make sure your ducks are in a row. Make sure all of the tools and resources are in place. Make sure that you've thought through scenarios that could become barriers to your execution of that thing that you're setting out to get accomplished. Measure 3 times, check twice, cut once. In this instance, I recorded a phenomenal podcast. What I didn't realize or didn't check was that my audio on that podcast was functioning accordingly. When I tell you I had to process the disappointment of my first official podcast, full dialogic podcast, having great video and no audio. The disappointment I had to navigate in the launch of that as a new podcast host. The disappointment that I had to carry as I called the phenomenal professional who took part in that dialogue and tell them that, hey, by the way, the audio wasn't working and we have no audio in our video. The time that this person invested, the time that I invested, all felt lost. So then how do I pull myself up the accountability ladder, get out of this victim mindset and do something with that? And of course, I have some workarounds, some things that I'm working through to make sure that it's not all lost, that we have an opportunity to hear this phenomenal leadership voice as we talk about this conversation around personal accountability. So I want to share again, anything that's important to you, take the time to measure 3 times, check twice, and cut once, so you don't find yourself redoing what you set out to accomplish that could have been avoided with greater preparation, greater due diligence up front. Sometimes that second chance isn't always possible. With that being said, I hope you enjoy this daily light point. Tune in again. Real leaders, real talk, real time.